to a show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. And it's that time of year, y'all. It's the holiday season, and I don't even know where we are when we are. It might be before Christmas. It could be after Christmas. I'm not sure when Hanukkah hits, and Kwanzaa falls in that same pocket too. But happy holidays to all of you. And thank you for being here this week on the podcast, or this episode on the podcast. I want to welcome a fellow Potter. Just made that up on the spot, son. Fellow podcaster, which there's quite a bit of similarities here. When they started their podcast, around the same time as I started mine, years difference, but around the same time, same rank. We've had similar guests on, we have geographical, similarities in our past. So all this stuff it's almost like we're cousins, but it's how we rock and roll out here on Off the Mats World. So today on the podcast, I want to welcome the host of the BJJ Babes Podcast, Miss Laura the Blue Belt. What's up, Laura? How you doing?
Hey, Dante. What's up, cousin? I'm going to go with it for cousins. It's happening.
I'm down. I'm down with it. How are you? And welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this.
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so pumped to chat.
Well, good. As you know, I saw your podcast. Well, first off, I found you through Instagram, as I find everyone, because social media. But like, I had a recent guest on, and I saw that you like to post on Off the Mats, and I was like, okay. And I saw the name, I was like, oh, that's a podcast. Let's see what's going on. Because I always feel like people think there's this competition or pride thing amongst podcasts, where it's like, I don't want to promote another podcast. It's like, I got pride issues. So, I saw another podcast. I was like, oh, let's go investigate, because the way I look at it is cross promotion. Like, let me see if I can get you on the pod. And, at the very least, we start growing our platforms in this world. So I was like, let's reach out. And, it's like, look, I'll see if she wants to be a guest. If she says no, thank you, I'm like, all right, no hard feelings. But if you say yes, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, let's set it up. So here we are, we're setting it up. But I did want to, as I went through and I'm looking at the podcast and listening as well, want to kind of get a little bit about your jiu-jitsu journey, what got you into the, into the sport or arts, and, just where we're at now.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, thank you again so much for having me on. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think we're all out here doing the same thing. We love jiu-jitsu. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to have you on my podcast as well in the future. I started jiu-jitsu in May of 2022. I had just moved to San Diego. And when I got to San Diego, my boyfriend that I thought I was going to marry, that we'd gone ring shopping and were discussing our future together, decided to break up with me. And so, when you're going through a breakup, sometimes it's a great time to start something new because you need a distraction. And there was a gym that kept advertising on my Facebook that had jiu-jitsu and some other combat sports. I had taken some Muay Thai classes years ago when I lived in Baltimore. And so I was like, I'm going to go check this out. They have Muay Thai, they have jiu-jitsu. And I tried a jiu-jitsu class because they told me I didn't need a gi for the first class. So it was pretty low, cost of entry for the first class. And it was something, I was almost 36. I was 35, turning 36 at the time. And I remember thinking, this is going to take me time to figure out if this is something I can be good at, to like actually learn this art. And there's so little as you get older that you have no foundation in. We get so caught in our comfort zones. You know, you run from an early age, you swim from an early age, you do all kinds of sports from an early age. And the older you are, the more you just kind of stay in those comfort zones, because it's really hard to build a foundation of knowledge in something you have no experience in, especially as an adult. And I was like, I could quit now because this is hard, or I could dig deep and just dive into this and acknowledge the fact that I have no foundation here and see where it goes. And I chose to do that. I chose to challenge myself and build a new skill set as an adult. And I will also admit there's a really petty side to me. The boyfriend who had just broken up with me, I was like, he would not be okay with the fact that I am in close contact with other men like this. He would have been jealous of it. And so there was a pettiness to it too. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes, you know, great things are born out of not great motivations. And I would say that was one of them.
I'm motivated by spite most days. Like anytime someone says, dude, you did that really well, or you did that really fast at work, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it out of hate. Trust me. It's not that I'm not excited. I'm doing this because y'all thought I couldn't. So.
Yep. Turns out we are cousins.
It's connecting fiber there. Growing up, did you do any other sports? You know, like as you mentioned, like, you know, a lot of us growing up, there's always like something where there's soccer, especially Maryland, it's soccer or lacrosse, you know, football, basketball, anything like that, like growing up.
Yeah, so I've always been active. Fun fact, my mother was a jazzercise instructor. I love telling people that because it's hilarious and so 80s. And both her and my dad are very active people. They still are. So they had me in every sport. The ones I stuck with were, I played softball, and then I was a dancer. I was on the dance team. Maryland Poms. I was a Pom. And so that was my thing growing up. And I think especially the dance background kind of helped with jiu-jitsu in terms of body awareness. And then it doesn't necessarily help with rolling because there's an improvisation to rolling and on the spot that doesn't really come from dance. But in terms of learning techniques, it definitely helped me. And I think it made me look way more proficient in the beginning than I actually was, because I could watch the professor demonstrate a technique and I could like basically give it right back during drilling. So my professors thought I knew more than I did.
They're probably like, oh, we've got a prodigy on our hands right here. She's got it. She's picking these moves up quick.
Yeah, until we started live rolling, and then I got subbed in 2 seconds.
You know, there's a balance to that, though. You know, you can't beat yourself too much about that one.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I always think about like folks who come into the sport. It's like anyone that's got some sort of physical background always feel like, okay, you know, you got a little bit of a head start. You know, I've seen people who've come in at 34 with zero athletic history at all. They've never done anything. And a couple of those folks, it was a rough ride. It was like I don't know what to say, but we're gonna work. We're gonna get you. And you know, the two that I've encountered at least were like, yeah, I'm not sticking around for this. I didn't do sports for a reason as a kid, and now I'm in my 30s. So what was I thinking? But we can all still, I think, again, if you've got that background of some sort, you know, we can catch on.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even granted, you know, we both had our mutual guest, Sarah Ariza. Like Sarah talks about how she was not athletic and wasn't into athletics. And she ended up being a professional MMA fighter fighting Misha Tate. So, you know, I think sometimes with some people, they just haven't found their sport yet. And maybe jiu-jitsu is their sport.
Yeah, there's one of our students that we had. Well, I guess he was. I guess I can call him a coach. Really, he was there before me. He taught me stuff. He was the first person that I rode when he choked me, and I was like, Again, out of spite, I stayed
Hmm.
because I was going to get this kid back.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I never got him back. Like when he turned 18, I remember rolling with him. He was about to go away for college and we were just in 50-50 for 3 minutes. It's like, great. I'm
Hmm.
never getting that sub back. But he wasn't really an athlete. He was an athlete, but it wasn't one of those things where like, he took to sports or anything. But jiu-jitsu is that thing that he really gravitated to, and it worked very well for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like you said, sometimes it's just like finding your sport. You may not, get it early on. And I think with, some folks that start later that didn't do sports, like, oh, maybe I'm gonna hit the jackpot now. You could.
Hmm.
I started jujitsu around the same age as you, so it was one of those things where I was like, look, man, let's just go ahead and do something new. Football is not working for me. My body hurts. My knees hurt. And then I did jujitsu. I was like, ah, everything still hurts, but it's a good hurt.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. When you said my body hurts, I was like, so you started jujitsu, your body still hurts, right?
Oh, I remember, I want to say about a year in, I was rolling with another white belt. He
Hmm.
had my back and he rolled me right back over my knees.
Ooh.
Sprained my ankle pretty bad. Like when people are like, "What's your worst injury you ever had?" and I go back to that because later on I'm hobbling home
Mhm.
and my wife uh is waiting for me at the door and she's like, I have some news for you. I was like, yeah, what's going on? Like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh man. So I always joke and say, what's your worst injury? Well, my wife, she told me she was pregnant. Like, how's that your worst injury? Why? I hurt my ankle really bad.
Mhm.
And, you know, she like when she told me she was pregnant, it was like screw this ankle. I don't care about this ankle anymore. Let's like what do we got to do for you? Like let's go out to Whole Foods, get all your vitamins and get you set up. So I always count her pregnancy as my injury.
Mhm.
So people are like, "Oh, what a weirdo." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're in this together, okay?" Except
Yeah.
for when I hurt my shoulder yesterday. She was like, "Yeah, I got nothing for you." like like go take some pills and lay down. So for you, as you transition through the sport and you just got your blue belt last spring.
Yep, I got it in May.
Oh, congrats on that. I don't have the soundboard here, so I can't get the applause button going, but congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
a big thing because blue belt is it's like starting is a big thing,
Mhm.
but then getting your blue belt because now you're at a point where it's like there's this understanding you've gotten where it's like I now know what I don't know, and
Mhm.
and I can now start building on that. So congrats on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the blue belt too, there's so many people who just kind of dabble and never, especially, I train at a UFC gym. So we have a full gym and even cardio classes in addition to the jujitsu. So you get a lot of people who are like, have their gym membership and are like, I'm going to pop in and try jujitsu. And like maybe every other month, like you see those people, but they don't consistently come. So you have these people that like dabble but they never really get past white belts. And I feel like the blue belt, for me at least, was like, this is something I have committed to and I have put the work into. I'm not just like this dabbler that comes to class every once in a while and tries to show off my high school wrestling. I did not wrestle, but I'm maybe talking a little shit on some of the people that do dabble.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the tricky thing though about a gym that has so much to offer. It's
Hmm.
like, do you get people that commit heavier to one thing versus the other, or those folks that just kind of put, dip their toes into everything? Which, sure, you get a jack of all trades, I guess, but it's like if you put them against someone who's been training one art more proficiently,
Hmm.
they're gonna get jacked up pretty bad. So at your gym, though, I know sticking more so with jujitsu, did you toy around with Muay Thai or any other martial arts?
I ended up not. I thought I would. I thought I was going to do some of the kickboxing, the Muay Thai. And then I think, part of it I realized with the jiu-jitsu is like, I need to like, if I want to actually figure this out, and I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but if I want to actually have a chance at figuring this out, I need to focus. And I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but one of the traits I do have is I will hyper focus on something. If something catches my attention, I will just like zero in on it. And I think that's what happened with jiu-jitsu. So then just the other disciplines kind of fell to the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, it's for the better, I think.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is better. I mean,
yeah. And honestly too, like part of it, once I, decided to stick with jiu-jitsu, I was like, look, like there is incidental contact. I mean, I incidentally got kneed in the face today at open mat. Last weekend, my opponent and I bumped heads and I had the big bump on my head. But in general, you're not trying to hit each other in the face versus Muay Thai, MMA, they're striking arts. And so you're actively trying to like hit each other in the face. And, I have a day job. Like, I don't need to show up at work with a black eye. Although it would be funny if I did from jiu-jitsu, and I would absolutely tell everyone exactly what happened, but not trying to have that happen.
I had a teammate, and she and I are rolling. She's got she's in half guard at this point, and I just worked on the knee bar from there. I was going to spin over her head and catch the knee bar. I just learned this 3 days prior. I was excited because somebody took the bait. I was like, yes. But I'd only drilled it during that class a couple times. So I forgot you have to kind of, hold their shoulder down, so they don't pop up. I didn't. And I went to swing my leg over. She sat up, caught a knee right to the eye. And I felt so bad. Like like all you hear is like, oh shit. And then I go, oh shit. And and her boyfriend at the time was training with us. And I like crouched down, like hugged her, like, oh my God, oh my God. So, like the older sibling just hit the younger siblings, like, shh, don't tell mom, don't tell mom. And she had graduation like coming up.
Oh.
And I was like, oh no. She managed, the black eye wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where I was like, oh, geez, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, and I've never gone for that knee bar ever again. It was like, I almost went for it last week because I was about to try something else. And the guy, he blocked it. I was like, dude, that knee bar's there. All you got to do is make sure he doesn't pop up. And I was like, no, because I know my luck. He'll pop up. And what I look like, kneeing a 6-year-old man in the face.
No, I mean, that's the thing. At least in jiu-jitsu, it's like if it happens, it's intentional versus like Muay Thai. It's like, well, you're actively punching and kneeing people in the face. Like that's the goal. Versus in jiu-jitsu, it's like incidental contact happens. We're it is a violent sport, but we're not aiming to do it.
Yeah. It's like Damian Maya, once said that the beauty about jiu-jitsu is you can train at near 100% without hurting anyone. And, everything comes, it's a good time. Whereas you're boxing 100%. Oh, you're trying to kill each other and someone's going to get hurt. Muay Thai, kickboxing, any of it. So jiu-jitsu is that art where you can, if you need to go 80 to 90%, you can do it safely. So what was kind of the motivation behind starting the podcast up?
Yeah. So I think there were a couple of motivations behind it. I have been wanting to do a podcast for years. I am not a naturally artistic person. I can't sing, I can't draw, I can't paint. But something that I am decent at is speaking and writing. And so to me, podcasting was a medium that I could essentially create a form of art. And so trying to come up with a topic, I was like, well, why not jiu-jitsu? Because it's something I can talk about that I can keep completely on that topic, you know, not talk about my professional life at all. It's something I can keep separate. And so there's a lot of jiu-jitsu podcasts out there. So I thought about, you know, what do I want it to be about? I've only been training 2.5 years. No one wants to listen to me talk about technique. I don't want to listen to me talk about technique because I'm like classic blue belt and probably getting it wrong half the time. And sometimes when I listen to jiu-jitsu podcasts, I'm not always in a headspace where I want to actually listen to someone talk about technique. Sometimes I love jiu-jitsu. I just want to hear them talk about jiu-jitsu. And I was like, okay, I'm going to create a podcast that I would want to listen to where we just talk about jiu-jitsu. And in looking at that space, it was a very male dominated space. So I was like, well, if I make it really, you know, kind of from a woman-centered view, I'm taking an angle that is a little less saturated. And then the final part of it was purely selfish. I train in San Diego. We are a place that is full of people who are world champions. And that's really cool. I get to train with some really amazing people. I get to learn from some really amazing people. You mentioned Damian Maya, one of my coaches, like trains with him. I don't know if he trains under him, but he brought Damian to a class one night, and Damian Maya taught us back escapes, and it was the coolest night of my life. But those people are at another level. Like my jiu-jitsu will never be at that level. And so part of my podcast was I wanted to talk about everyday, day-to-day challenges that other women face, in part just like for me to see the world of jiu-jitsu, even just for people who are like me, and talk to women who inspire me that, you know, maybe are my belt, maybe a higher belt, that are out there doing the thing, but not, you know, not necessarily the world champions, as much as I want to talk to them as well. And I figured, you know, I want to hear from those everyday people, you know, maybe other people want to hear from them too.
Yeah, that's always a tricky thing because I have kind of a similar mindset going into it. It's like, yeah, I want to talk to people and hear their stories. Like, I don't, because I sure as hell you can't talk about technique on here. I know very little technique. Like, I get by again out of spite.
Mm-hmm.
If you got my back, I'm going to escape, not because I'm using good technique. It's because I'm mad at you now because you're there and I need to get out. Not for myself, but to prove that you can't hold me there. But it's I feel like voices like yours in the community are important because, you know, first off, you know, like you pointed out, it is a male dominated, like jiu-jitsu in itself, and then the jiu-jitsu podcast space as well. It is very much so. And the couple of female like centric MMA, jiu-jitsu, martial arts podcasts that I have heard, you know, kind of sexualized it a little bit. I was like, I mean, there's more to this, and kudos to them, you know, if that's, you know, their prerogative, and they want to embrace, you know, their sexuality like that. Cool in the gang. It's like, I just really want to hear some cool jiu-jitsu stories. I want to hear, you know, how you got there. I want to hear, what are you working on? What are you working towards? Things like that. So voices like yours in this space, I think, are extremely important. So, I'm glad that you were like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take a shot at this because we also share another thing in common. I'm not very artistic. Like, but if you tell me to write you a story or a song, son, I got you. Give me 20 minutes. I got you. That's, I was like, here, let me just turn on this mic and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a beauty in creating something. And I think podcasting, I mean, I love listening to podcasts. It's a medium that I really enjoy. So just getting to create something in that medium was important to me. And then, you know, it's interesting on the, you know, the topic that I chose and the area I chose. What I found actually, just, you know, my podcast is still very small. It's very niche, but my most popular episodes, you know, I've had a few people on that have big followings and are, you know, very successful even on like the jiu-jitsu competition circuit. But the episodes that I have the highest analytics on are very everyday people telling their stories. And what that tells me is there's people out there that's, you know, what they want to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The, you know, average person, like I always joke about it, you know, because one of my friends had said like, oh, so you want nobody's like me? And I was like, well, no, it's not that you're a nobody. You're, you know, a regular person with an interesting story. And, you know, same thing. I've had people with big followings come on and it's like, you know, hardly a peep, you know, but, you know, the top episodes I have are like 3 people who, you know, they have small social media followings. You know, they're not, you know, huge in the community as far as competition, but, you know, they're just interesting people with interesting stories. And, you know, whether it be mental health or, you know, just the determination to, you know, fight through setbacks. And it's like, you know, I've had people, you know, want to hear episodes on weight loss journeys. And those are some of the ones that do well too. I'm like, oh, people don't, you know, it's not that people don't want to hear Gordon Ryan or you know, Mason Fowler or anyone like that. Like I'm sure they do, but you know, it's like their story's been heard through other platforms almost, you know, millions of times, you know, but you know, you give them, you know, Otto from around the corner who, you know, just lost 150 pounds through sheer determination. And people are like, oh, dude, tell me that story. I want to hear more because it's inspiring because Otto's just like us. So you get it, girl.
Yeah. And I definitely see it with the women because we are a minority in the jiu-jitsu world, but at the same time, you know, we're spread out over gyms across the country, but you look at women's jiu-jitsu events and they're packed, they're sold out. Like when I tell people I have a women's jiu-jitsu podcast, like they're so into it. And whenever I go to women's open mats, women's classes, you know, the women in the jiu-jitsu world are, they love, I mean, they're in, like they love it. They are all in. They are committed to it. It's just that we're not the dominant face at any given gym. And I think ways when we do come together, we're almost that more passionate because we know how special it is when we do all get to be together.
Sure. When you started training at your gym, like were there many other females there or was it, you know, was it like a handful or so?
Yeah, I would say a handful, but I will say my first class, I think there were 2 or 3 other women in the class. And I think one of the things that did bring me back is the fact that, you know, one of them saw me and came up and introduced herself and was like, so like, I just like so nice and so friendly, like right off the bat. I was like, oh, like I'm new to the city. I don't really know anybody. And here's this woman who's like super cool and friendly. You know, this might be a place where I can build some community. And we still, you know, I'd say we're mostly men. We've probably got, unfortunately, we don't all always go to class together. But yesterday, 4 of us all went to a women's class together at another gym. Like, so we do have like 5 or 6 of us like all together. But unfortunately, it's not everybody in a single class all at once.
Sure. Understand. Well, I mean, schedules are what they are. And, you know, I remember at my gym, it's obviously mostly men, but we do have quite a few females. I remember going to one of the Wednesday morning classes, there were like 6 females in that class. And I was like, yo, what, like, this is wild. I've not seen this many women in one like classroom. So, like, this is interesting. And then I ended up having to roll with one of the brown belts, and like, I, I didn't do well, but, that's just the thing. It's like, and when you see the community, come together, around that, like whether it be a all women's open mat or all women, women's seminar for that matter, these things do well. And, I guess also sometimes it's tricky trying to like get other females to join. My wife, like, she has no interest
Mhm.
at all. I'm like, nothing that I've ever said has made her want to have any interest in. I guess it doesn't help that I come home limping or immediately like, hey, I gotta get an ice pack.
Yeah.
But my daughter's interested. My daughter's like, oh, let me at it. But my wife's like, nah, like, I'm not interested in this. And I don't know, what the disconnect there is for a lot of women for it. And it could just be, again, you look at it from the outside, it's as a male dominated sport. So maybe sometimes women feel like that I wouldn't fit in, or even they look at other women doing it, it's like, wow, there's a lot of aggression there. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I mean, like my coach would say, we're not baking cakes here. Like, somebody gets kneed in the face, that's part of the game. I fall on my face a lot.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's part of the game. I think I'm just clumsy, but still, um, you know, hopefully, as the sport continues to grow, you know, having more women kind of latch onto it and really enjoy it and put it on display, goes a long way, because, all women's competitions, super exciting. Like,
Mhm.
you see a lot of good scraps, like just a lot of good action. And, I don't know how people can't, be excited about that. Like, when Fionn versus Mackenzie Dern
Mhm.
at CJI, it was one of the best matches I've seen ever. It's
Yeah.
like, how can you not be excited for that?
Yeah, that was the best. I mean, CGI had a lot of good matches, but I submit Fionn McKenzie was the best match of CJI.
Hmm.
And
And
then ADCC the same weekend, like I was so high on Adele Fornerino like the whole time. And then she goes in, submits Bia Basilio. Then she defeats the Lady Goat, Bia Mosquita. Like she's the smallest person in the competition, wins double gold. Like the women who compete at that high level are amazing.
yeah, I mean, and it's something to, there's something to be said about that though too. It's like that hard work and just sticking with it. You know, you look at something like that, it's like, that's so far away. That's so far out of my even as a guy, for me, seeing, women at that level is like, oh, that's so far out. Like, that's not in my reach. But I'm sure they probably thought that too at one point, but they just kept working hard, and, now they're making big moves. So,
Mm-hmm.
good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting talking about things that keep women from getting into jujitsu. Like I'm always trying to get my friends into it. I've convinced two friends to go into it, but I think they were inclined to try it. They just needed a push. But even my one friend, I started with her, I took her to a women's only class, and then she ended up joining my gym. But when she came to try my gym, she was like, it was really intimidating going into a room full of men like that. And so I think even women that have an interest in it, there is a barrier to entry sometimes in the intimidation factor of walking into such a male dominated setting.
Yeah, I've wondered also too, when Ronda Rousey was in the UFC and she's main event and everything, you had a wave of
Mm-hmm.
fighters come through because of Ronda Rousey. And now there's not really that visibility in women's MMA right now. Amanda Nunes is retired. And, when you look at the divisions, before, you can ask a casual, they know who one of the women's champions were. Now, like, I watch regularly, and I'm still like trying to remember, like, okay, wait, who's got which belt now? But I think, when you have that visibility, that helps a lot in getting people at least in the door. But like you said, once your friends get there and, they go to a regular class and it's full of men, it's like, ugh, like this, that I've got guy friends that won't train because of that.
Yeah.
So I could imagine, what it's like for women stepping out there and it's like, holy shit. Like,
yeah. But I think that's something too, I talk about it on my podcast. Like, I'll talk to especially the women who own their gyms or who are teachers, what we can do to keep people coming in. And I do think there's a component, like those of us, especially those of us who have been at our gyms for a minute now and have a blue belt or higher, for when new people come in, women, men, whoever, it's what can we do to make them feel welcome? Especially, like, honestly, as a woman, when a guy comes in and he's obviously everyone starts out spazzy, everyone starts out not knowing their strength. But when I see a guy who is really open to learning how to be technical and learning how to be a good partner, it's something I have to remind myself of, like, keep encouraging them. Be the teammate that makes people, whether they are male or female, be the teammate that makes people want to come back.
Yeah, that's, I think, super important, is you want people to see this as a good time. This can, you can really grow from this and gain. And if you get people coming in and, they do a couple classes, they feel like they're not gaining anything because, the person you're working with is not patient.
Mm-hmm.
It can go a long way in derailing, their further interest in the sports.
Mm-hmm.
Like with one of my buddies that just recently started, well, my buddy's son just recently started training. And it's funny because I forgot about those spazzy days.
Yeah.
And I worked with him all last week. And I'm just sitting there like, oh man, like, okay, go back to those preschool days where you used to teach the kids who, you got to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
And those things go a long way.
Yeah.
Like, I guess us as, like, higher ranks, we have to be the ambassadors of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think something some days I'm better at it than others, but it's saying the things to the new people that I needed to hear as a white belt. And I think, sometimes, like, there are some white belts who are less spazzy and more controlled, and they almost have a harder time because they're not spazzing. It's easier to submit them and control them, but they're actually, I've seen it in partners, and I try to compliment them because they're actually going to be very good grapplers, because you can tell, even though right now, like, it's easy to control them, it's easy to submit them, you can tell that they're actually conscious about what they are doing and how they are moving. It's just that they're not going to use the technique as fast as they need to in a live round. Yeah.
That was me. It's like I could defend everything because I was very aware.
Yeah.
But I was hesitant to actually try anything because they almost feel like, as aware as I am, they're probably 10 times more aware. So I was always scared to go for anything. But I think also those folks too, at the very least, as they're learning, they're at least absorbing it in a way where it's like they feel like they're gaining from it versus, if you're spazzy, there's almost kind of this like, I don't need, it's like I can just kind of take a couple steps over that and get there faster because, I'm strong, because that's the kiss of death there is being strong. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, you're so strong. It's like, it's not a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or, I mean, what I try to tell people, if like the guys that come in and they already have natural strength, or the guys that come in with a wrestling background, the way to do it is to like hold that back for now, learn the jiu-jitsu, and then as you learn it, bring your wrestling back into it, because bring your strength back into it. Because if you're just muscling your way through a round or using wrestling your way through a round with me, like, okay, yes, you're going to beat me. Like, I'm smaller than you. I'm weaker than you. I have less testosterone than you. That's great. Congratulations. You beat up a 38-year-old woman. But if you want to compete and you're going against someone your weight, your size, your age, and they're using jujitsu, those advantages might not have the same meaning. But
yeah.
if you take the time, you get the technique, you work on it, and you get really technical, and then you bring your strength and your wrestling back into it, holy shit, like, you're dangerous.
Yeah. I always say, like, the people I fear the most are the wrestlers who've embraced jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
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 Like, the wrestlers themselves, I'm not too worried. Yeah, like, you're gonna be stronger than me. I'm what am I, 40 something? Like, you're gonna be stronger than me. You're probably faster than me. But I'm more patient. I can wait out some bad positions. But if you're a wrestler and you've got some jiu-jitsu now, me waiting for in those bad positions, you're working on submission. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if I know you don't have any submissions, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here. But if you got some submissions in your pocket, it's like, I've got to get out of here. So it's just a matter of, like you said, pick up some of the jiu-jitsu first and then start peppering in what you have. Like, there's a post on Instagram a while back talking about CrossFitters joining jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
and how basically, I guess it was more putting CrossFitters down. And it's like, yes, on day one, or week one even, you're probably going to get the better of a CrossFit athlete. But let that CrossFit athlete actually learn some jiu-jitsu, you're going to have a very, very difficult time. So,
Mm-hmm.
that just goes with, anyone coming into the sport, though. It's like, once they learn and kind of get their own style, it's going to be tough. And I guess that's kind of the big thing, is like learning and knowing in the beginning that you
Mm-hmm.
got to kind of get through that, because sometimes you might feel like, at least I did, like, am I ever going to learn how to shrimp properly? Like,
But
like,
then the next thing you know, you learn it, and then you're doing it in your sleep.
yeah, I
Yeah.
actually was.
Yeah. No, like, I have a lot of pets. And then right now my boyfriend and I are long distance, but usually we live together. So any given night, it's like, 2 to 3 animals plus another human in the bed, and I got to get out of bed to like use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I literally shrimp to like get out of the bed.
I mean, jiu-jitsu carries over off the mat as well.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
for like, even just getting off the ground, like if you're sitting down, I use, combat stand up. That's just how I stand up. But I noticed my daughter, when she was really, really little, that's how she stood up too.
Huh. So
She
you
had never seen me do it, though.
yeah.
And my coach had pointed out, he was like, we naturally do a lot of these movements as children. We just unlearn those movements just for whatever reason. And now my daughter doesn't stand up that way anymore, but she used to always just do a combat stand up and carry on with her day. But now, who knows how she gets up? Now she's 8. She just jumps up and runs. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
there we go again.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is, I don't know. I think a lot of, like, especially as an adult, I feel like a lot of my 30s has been relearning things I did or mindsets I had as a kid that I then unlearned in my 20s when I was like concerned with, I don't know, living my life a certain way.
Yeah. So that's the game of it, though.
It is.
So with the podcast right now, you've been going since August, you said.
Yep.
And how's it coming along for you? Like, how are you liking this experience thus far?
Yeah, I love it. I think it has actually helped my jiu-jitsu because there are people who come on and they have little tidbits or like pieces of advice or observations that I hadn't thought of before. And so that's improved my game. Or I've had people come on and say things where I'm like, oh my God, I feel that way. And it's validated that point. So it's brought a mental component to my jiu-jitsu that has really helped. And then I'm also just having a lot of fun. I've met some really awesome people through the podcast. I've reconnected with people. I had a high school friend on.
Yes, I listened to that one.
Yeah. I had my high school, like I've known Megan since we were in 6th grade. I've had friends on that I didn't necessarily connect with previously through martial arts. I talked to Jiu-Jitsu grandma in Alabama. Like last weekend I competed, and two of my previous guests I saw at the competition and got to go up and meet in person and say hi. So just the little community I have now of people that I know is awesome. And I love that. I'm having a great time. And then I'm just, for 2025, just, I'm taking a break. Going to record interviews here and there over Christmas, but just taking a break from posting new episodes and going to start posting again in January. And, my goals are just to, improve my editing, improve my sound quality, maybe add some music. My little sister used to make YouTube videos, so I'm going to ask for her help over Christmas. And then just be more fearless with reaching out to people and getting more guests on. And just, I want to talk more about the mental health side of it, gym culture, calling out, the more, highlighting the really positive things in the jiu-jitsu world, but then calling out some of the more toxic and abusive practices. Because my mindset is, if someone has an issue with that, then like I'm self-screening them out of my personal jiu-jitsu community.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I look at now with this podcast. It's like, as I'm however many years in, 4, we'll say 4, it seems right. It's like, what I want to do next with it. I think improving the sound quality should be top of the list, but I always feel like, because I always say at the end of the show, if you got any comments, concerns, or criticisms, let me know. And no one's like messaged and said, dude, your sound is trash. Because I know it was for the first 10 episodes, and no one, it's like, y'all aren't real friends, yo.
Yeah.
Y'all let me go out there looking like that.
I think though, mine is, it's funny sometimes. Mine is very hit or miss. And, sometimes like my interview, I think 2-3 weeks ago with Aaron Quillen, that episode did not upload to the cloud, right? So I had to go to the backup audio. So like the first 10 minutes of it uploaded and it sounded amazing. It looked amazing. I was like, this is great. And then all of a sudden it cut out. So I had to use the backup and the quality just wasn't as good, but it was such a good interview that I was like, you know what? I will do everything I can with editing to make this sound good, because I have to put this episode up. And yeah, I haven't gotten comments either. I think the topics we're going into are ones that people are there for the content, so you want your quality to be good. You don't want it to be a distraction, but also like if the content is there, I've put out some episodes that just I did my best in, editing to improve the quality, but it still wasn't great, but the episodes still have, found their audience.
Yeah, I think, when the content is there, yeah, the audio isn't, that big of a deal.
Mhm.
My very first episode was kind of a solo intro episode, like yours. Like it was
Yeah.
just kind of here's a quick intro. This is what I'm looking to do. Then the first official episode with a guest, I had all the equipment,
Hmm.
everything. I don't even know where this mic came from. I think somebody gave it to me. I don't know, but I had um, like a little, mixer and sound thing and everything, and all the mics, and I didn't use it.
Yeah.
My teammate and I, we sat in front of my phone,
Hmm.
and my phone says it has two mics, one at the top and one at the bottom. So
Hmm.
I thought that he was picking up on the mic, and he was not picking up on the mic.
Uh,
So listen to episode 1. You can hear me clear as day, but you hear him like a whisper. And I did everything possible to turn that volume up on his side, and it just wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay. I mean, it still did well.
hmm.
But I think he was just like, okay, we can't keep this up. You can't keep sounding like this. And then I think I was recording through Skype for a while, and that was a nightmare. And it was like everything. Eventually, I ended up for remote episodes using this platform, StreamYard,
Yeah.
and it seems like it's been working. The only issue I ever have is like my Wi-Fi is not the greatest, so I hardwire into it, and it seems to hold up. But I'm always concerned about the sound quality. I'm like, man, I hope it sounds good. Like, meanwhile, I really should be, like, man, let's focus on these guests. Like, meanwhile, as you all are talking, I'm like, it sounds good. I hope it stays sounding good because it sounds good here, but I don't know what it's going to sound like later. But I think that's just the worries of a podcaster, I guess, or at least for me.
Yeah. No, I have the same, like, when I was recording with Jiu-Jitsu Grandma, there was this echo on her end, and I was able to, I think there's still some echoes in the episode. I was able to fix most of it, but it was actually really hard, like, because everything I would say, I could hear the echo. I could hear myself echoing on her side. And so I had to figure out a way to like tune it out and still get a good interview because I mean, Jiu-Jitsu Grandma is a lady named Elaine. She is a purple belt, 76, trains in Alabama. She's like so one of my role models. And when she agreed to come on my podcast, I was like so excited. I was like, I got this interview. I got to make it work.
Yeah, she's like I've seen her around through social media, and I've always wanted to reach out, but I'm just like, I think when I was going to reach out, she had been on like 3 other podcasts. I was like, she probably needs a break. Let me just chill out. But yeah, like I haven't made it to that episode yet. As I'm listening through your episodes now, I'm like, okay, I think I'm just at the end of the one with Megan McCall. I was like,
Okay. Yeah.
okay, like I'm moving on to the next, but yeah, listening to your podcast is definitely um it's refreshing because it feels like again we're kind of in the same pocket of like we're just having conversations with people and really wanting to know their story, but through conversation versus like the simple, so tell me where it all started, and then once they answer the question, so tell me this, it's like versus like as we have our conversations, we build our questions off of what was just said versus like I have a program list here, even though I do have a list, but I still don't necessarily use it because again this conversation goes back and forth and it's pretty solid.
Yeah. No, I have like a basic list of questions, and it is, if I just used those, my episodes would be 10 minutes long. It's a starting point for further conversations.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, at the end of the day, it's just fun to get together with people who also love jujitsu and talk about what we love about it and, our thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think it's also always interesting to hear someone else's perspective, whether it be from the beginning when they started, what they thought going in, what they thought they're getting into versus where they are now, and
Yeah.
how they feel, like what, like the confidence level of like you walking onto the mats now, or not even just onto the mats, but just competition.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, I think I am finally 2.5 years in, 6 months into having my blue belt. Like, I finally in class just feel like I'm having fun. Like, not that it wasn't fun before, but it's different. It feels like my roles, I'm doing more than surviving. Even if I'm rolling with the higher belts and I'm playing a lot of defense, like, it's fun. And last weekend, my competition was maybe, I think, my 6th or 7th competition overall, second at blue belt. And I finally feel like competitions are fun. Like, I'm looking forward to I finally feel like I don't have anything to prove, and it's just for fun.
Good. That's, I think the fun aspect is so important, because if you're not having fun, what are we really doing then?
Like, why are you paying to do, like, to, and that's something, I don't know if I listen to a lot of BJJ mental models, and that's Steve Kwan, I think, has a lot of really good insights on gym culture. And a lot of what he talks about is like, you're paying for this. Like, and some people, maybe they want to go to a gym where there's like a degree of like yelling and verbal abuse and things like that. But like, overall, why are you, like, it's one thing. I think respect, there's a bit, like, it's a martial art, and respect should be a big part of it. Respect and discipline, but also you're a paying customer. Like, that doesn't mean that you get to like tell the coach when you get promoted or dictate, how you train, but it does mean that, like, you're a paying customer. Why should they get mad at you if you go to an open mat at another gym? Like, things like that, I think, there are things that, being a paying customer, like, you shouldn't be subject to abuse and, toxic gym culture.
Oh yeah, it's super culty. Like, you can't go over to that gym. Like, it's like, well, why not? Like,
Yeah.
because we teach this way and only this way. Sounds like a cult.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, one of my podcast hobby, like, that I like to listen to a little bit culty, which is about cults. And at some point, there's I think it's Stephen Hassan has the bite model for determining whether or not something is a cult. Like, maybe we need to take some of those, like, look at that, and then look at some of the more culty gym cultures in the jiu-jitsu world, and kind of just do a side-by-side comparison.
Oh yeah, that's something that I always joke about with jiu-jitsu in general. Is like, is it a cult? It's like, well, not ours, but there's gyms that are that, it's like, I don't know, man, when you're telling other folks they can't go do something, it's like you said, we're a paying customer here, that there's no reason I shouldn't have freedom away from here to go, just, if I'm traveling, especially.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know, but I'm sure there's someone who, because it's, the world that we live in now on the internet, especially, if you're like, look, man, culty behavior is bad, you're gonna get somebody that says, nah, it's good, it's really good, actually. It's like, there's always one that wants to argue. It's like,
yeah. Oh,
not
no,
worth
totally. And I think that, like, with regards to cross training, the one, like, piece of it that I do think holds some water is hygiene. Like, be careful where you cross train, because you don't want to bring staff back into your gym. So that part of it, I get it. Look, like, there are people who train at gyms that don't allow cross training, and they love their gym. And there's some very respected gyms that don't allow cross training, but that's not the environment I want to train in personally.
Yeah, I think it's, again, a matter of like what works for you. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that will work for me personally. Not that I cross train too much, but it's the fact that I have the option to, I have friends at other gyms. They're like, hey, can you come through on a Saturday? All right. versus like, it's like, can you come through on Saturday? I can, but can we not do any pictures, no videos? I want to, can't let my, my team know about it. Meanwhile, I went and trained somewhere else a couple of weeks ago, and I came back and I was like, dude, I trained over here. Like, dude, it was so cool. I was like, really? Like, cool.
Yeah.
So you want to have that feeling that you can go cross train somewhere and come back and, share your experience versus like, shh, don't tell no one.
Yeah. No, there's every Saturday in the San Diego area, Rose Miller from Otto's teaches a free women's class at a gym near my gym. And through that, I've met so many women to the point where there were 3 of us competing on the same mat last weekend. Actually, 2 of us competed against each other. So we took a selfie and sent it to our women's class group chat. And I didn't have anyone to warm up with because I was the only one competing from my gym. One of my friends from Rose's women's class helped me warm up. So I think there are, I think we have this little community now in San Diego of Rosie's group class where, it's just another added layer of community in jiu-jitsu for us.
Absolutely. I think the beauty of it all is community. That's, I talked with my buddy the other day. So we were talking about church. I have nothing against religion by any means. Church isn't, my cup of tea personally. My grandparents go every Sunday.
Yeah.
And, I was explaining to my buddy, one of the things I think about, going to church, going to jiu-jitsu, going to anything, it's, the communities that we're choosing, the communities that we're setting up and being a part of. It's very important, especially as you get older. Because I remember, as we're kids, you hang out with your group of friends, every day, every weekend, whatever. But as you get older, life becomes, more complex and, you don't have that free time. So, having these communities like, jiu-jitsu, church, CrossFit, volleyball, whatever it may be, these things are so important. So, having that, for us with that experience in jiu-jitsu specifically, and super bias here, I think our communities, one of the best communities, to be a part of, because we all have, a similar goal to be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah. I think when you have a healthy gym environment, I think it's, I see the men at my gym and just men in general, and in everyday life, it's really hard for men to talk about mental health and to talk about their feelings and to be vulnerable. And look, okay, my male teammates, it's not like they're sitting around talking to me about their feelings all the time, but I do think that jiu-jitsu in the gym environment I'm in, which is not a super bro-y environment, it's very kind of family-esque. I think the way that the guys bond with each other, I think is great for their mental health. I think it's great for male friendships. And I think it probably makes them better partners to their significant others.
I agree 10,000%. I have, a lot of guy friends who don't train jiu-jitsu, and things are getting better in terms of talking about mental health because I'm very outspoken about it.
Yeah.
I've had my own struggles in the past. I'm very vocal on BJJ Wiki about it and in the podcast. And, my friends who aren't very, vocal about it, that shows. But the guys that I train with, we reach out to each other. We talk about it. It's not like a, sit down, around a campfire and pour your feelings out type thing. But it's like, it's like a check-in, like, hey, just checking in, didn't see it, training this week, everything okay? Or, hey, you looked a little different on the mats, everything, going okay. I think a big part of this too is with jiu-jitsu, and I can only speak for myself on this. This is my thought on it, my experience, at least, is there's this confidence of not being afraid to say the thing. There used to be this ego thing of if I talk about this guy's going to make fun of me, or that guy's going to make fun of me. And, I don't want to be in that position. Whereas now there's this confidence of I can speak up about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make fun of me, it's not even a matter of I could beat your ass. No, it's not that, but it's a matter of I now have the confidence to say, well, why do you feel that way though?
Mm-hmm.
And there could be hopefully an open discussion about it versus, the other person getting upset, which I haven't run into that other than with my
Yeah.
brother-in-law. But yeah, that's where physical violence becomes it's on the table. It doesn't happen, but just when I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, you understand, I can do things to you, dude. I just want to have a conversation. I just want to talk. Don't yell at me. But
Yeah.
I do think that, in our community, there is this confidence where we're not even confidence, but this comfort where we feel like we can talk. We don't feel like we're going to get judged by our teammates, male or female. It's really like you said, a family. It's an open family where I've had my struggles and I've leaned on my teammates, and shout out to them for being there and talking me, down off the ledge. It's like things are going to be okay. So, I think there needs to be more discussion in those arenas too.
Yeah, I fully agree. I am, such an advocate for mental health discussions. I'm very open with like the fact that, I have anxiety. I take Prozac for my anxiety. Like I love Prozac. It works great for me. And like if, in my mind I'm like maybe that makes someone else who's struggling, who's afraid to talk to somebody and consider medication, maybe that helps them go on medication. And then if somebody hears that and it like makes them not want to talk to me because they're like, oh, she's crazy, I'm like, oh well, I just screamed some toxic person out, so win-win.
Very true. Very true. Um, I also consider doing this podcast a form of therapy as well.
Yeah.
Uh, like, because a lot of times I have friends on,
Mm-hmm.
and as we were talking about it earlier, just kind of, meeting so many different people through the podcast. I've actually gained so many friends, like what I would call friends. People like, I can turn to as like, we check in on each other, and that's one of those things that I've put up posts on social media. Jiu-jitsu is my therapy, and I get a lot of backlash for that, and that's fine. It's I actually mentioned this to my therapist the other day, and she was like, "Really?" Because doing like a physical activity is a form of therapy, and I was like, "Well, I mean, you should jump into my comments and let them know." But jiu-jitsu, as a form of therapy, anything physical as a form of therapy, but this podcast is also my therapy too, which is probably why I record it probably fucking 5-6 times a week. I need a break.
Yeah, but I think sometimes, you know sometimes your thoughts are so much that you need to get them out somewhere, whether it's writing them down, talking them out, talking to somebody. So, you know, um, I think that is only healthy. It's interesting, like, I think you've been doing your podcast longer and you've got BJJ Wiki. So you've built up like a level of following where that I haven't yet, where I have yet to get trolls, which I'm thankful for. It sounds like, and I've seen them too. Like it's there's something. Well, I think in general in the internet age, people
Mhm.
love to troll, and then people in the jujitsu world love to troll, or they love to troll the jiu-jitsu world even if they're not really seriously training, but it's never anybody of consequence.
No, no. The was it Joe Rogan had said on his podcast a while ago, uh, winners aren't on the internet talking shit, losers are. You don't see Michael Jordan in comments talking shit. LeBron James isn't in the comments talking shit. Well, the only winner that is in the comments talking shit is Gordon Ryan, but that's a whole different thing. That's
Gordon's Gordon.
yeah,
Just gotta, I mean, at the end of the day, at least he's earned his right to talk shit. I mean, he is
yes,
extremely good at jujitsu.
yeah. Like I look at it like when Gordon Ryan's talking shit, I just say that's our special boy. and just leave it at that.
Yeah, he is our special boy for sure. But no, I mean, when I was starting the podcast, I talked to a friend who doesn't do jujitsu, but I was like, I'm just worried that someone's going to be out there being like, who the fuck does she think she is? Like, and what this woman said to me is, you know, the only people out there criticizing are the ones who aren't putting themselves out there and putting ideas out there into the world. And I think, you know, that is true. You know, yeah, the winners aren't, it's the Joe Rogan quote that you just gave. It's so true. The people that are actually out there putting themselves out there are not. It's people sitting at home, like in their mom's basement, like, my life sucks. I'm going to spread my misery.
Oh, of course. That's exactly it. It's just like, I want to, misery loves company. So I want to spread misery. And I know when I don't really deal with my comments anymore, I post and ghost.
Yeah.
I work with another podcast called Enriched Radio, and I guess I still kind of do their Facebook. I haven't done it in months, but the main guy's daughter is doing it now. So yeah, hand that over to her. But he was like, dude, you put up a post that kind of went low key viral. And I was like, really? I post and ghost, dude. I haven't looked back at that in months. So he was like, no, and he shows me the comments and all the stuff. I was like, oh wow, there's a lot going on. But the reason I don't get involved with the comments is because there's so many positive comments, yes, but those negative comments and the way my mental state works, it can really throw me off. So I just don't bother with them. I had a guest on previously, and she was explaining that she engages in all the comments. I was like, kudos to you. First off, like, shout out to you having time to do that, because she's collabed me in some videos and there are thousands of comments. I was like, yeah, I can't do that. And then also, shout out, to her patience for dealing with the trolls, because I'm quick to, if I see something, if it's a legitimate gripe, I'll respond. But if it's something that you can clearly see they're just trying to be a dick, I will delete it and block them. I have no interest in keeping that around. When I do mental health posts and I get people, especially suicide awareness, and I get people saying nobody cares, immediately gone. It's like, look, I'm sure you didn't want to be here in the first place. My comments are set up where you have to follow me to make a comment anyway. So you've clearly wasted the time to follow me just to do that, but I'm going to do you a favor and just remove you. But hopefully you don't have to deal too much with trolls, because it's a headache.
Yeah, I kind of think my game plan, if they ever come, is I'm just gonna go Craig Jones and troll him right back. Like, I'm just like, I might create a whole segment called "Feeding the Trolls." We'll see though. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I do have I have a friend who runs an animal rescue on a remote Pacific island, and she, their resources are so limited. Like, they do the best they can, but they have to do a lot of euthanasia, and it's just the nature of the game. And the trolls she gets are like, they're borderline like threatening to call child protective services on her, to have her kids taken away from her, like all these things. But part of her mindset on it is, well, this actually boosts my engagement, which then gets my rescue out to more people. So she fully engages with them. And like, depending on the day I'm having, sometimes I engage, because I'm like, look, bitch, like, why don't you fly to the middle of nowhere and like pay $5,000 a dog to get them off this like remote island? Then maybe you can like troll.
I had a friend who used to troll me on my Facebook account, and I would only respond to her with a smiley face or okay. And she would get so angry. One of the posts, I just kept doing it, and she goes, "Stop saying okay." I'm like, okay. It's like, that's effective too. And sometimes I'll do that. If somebody writes something shitty, I'll give them a thumbs up.
Oh yeah, the thumbs. Well, there's a whole like with narcissists are just looking like they thrive on setting other people off. So the way to shut down a narcissist is called the gray rock method, where you just ignore them, or you do like the thumbs up, or like, oh, that's nice. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, well, sometimes I need to be in the right headspace for that, because sometimes I'll read a comment and it will set me off, but like most times I just don't bother. It's just, and my daughter, she's been recently like, Dad, I want to do a podcast too. I'm like, well, honey bunny, we'll work on that. And it's like, I'll handle the social media, because you troll my kid, and then she comes back to me crying, I'm getting the dresses.
I hate, that I'm like, oh, who would troll an 8-year-old, but someone would, because
of course.
I
think there's a recent video, it might be older, I don't know, there was a kid at a competition and the dad flicked her off. Of course, with that, there's two sides to the story, which, yes, you're absolutely right. And, they're telling the other side of it. I guess the girl was beating the kid in the match, and I know I'm butchering everything that's here because it's been so long since I've seen it, but I think she was mocking the kid, perhaps, and the dad got upset. And it's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like that sucks for sure. But as an adult, you don't flick off a kid.
Yeah, you gotta rise up. I was just at Open Mat today. I was talking to the mom of this 16-year-old who was at Open Mat, and she was talking about a gym that her son used to train at, and how the parents would get into it with each other and like take it out to the parking lot. And it's like, come on now, like come on.
Yeah. That right there is already showing us, like, you got to be a better example for the kids. Period, number one.
What are you?
And not just the parents, but it's like what about the coaches? Like, somebody's got to step in and like, like, yo, what are we doing here? Like, y'all can't come back anymore if you're going to do this in front of the kids, especially.
Yeah. What kind of like person are you creating? Especially, I don't know. I look at jiu-jitsu and I see, even like Gordon Ryan talks a lot of shit, but like, he probably, like, if you actually interact with him outside of that, is probably actually not an asshole.
Yeah. I've actually heard he's a sweetheart, actually.
I've heard, and like, I hear that about so many like high level jiu-jitsu people. Like the women's lightweight black belt final yesterday was Brianna St. Marie versus Mo Black, and I saw a post that was like, this might be the nicest final and like the nicest podium like in the competition. Like you hear that so much about the people who are at the top of the stage. And like, I've met, I got to meet Adele Fornerino like 2 weeks ago, and she was delightful. Like, yeah, like that's just like, every time I've met somebody that's like at that level, they're always just so nice. So yeah, don't raise your kid to be an asshole, because they're not going to be a world champion. The world champions.
That's a big fact right there.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get out of here, I think I'm going to do, so the last couple episodes I did the Would You Rathers. I'm going to do rapid fire with you. 5 rapid fires. I guess, let me, it's not like an exact, like, give me a quick answer.
Okay.
So the first one, this should be an easy one. Favorite submission?
Armbar.
You seem the type. All right. Actually, this one might take some. Most influential BJJ grappler figure in the community for you?
Fionn Davis.
All right, you're going to these too quick.
Well, that, like, I mean, I have a lot of other people that are influenced, but her knee cut, that started my love of the knee cut.
Yeah. I was taking private lessons with one of my coaches and working on a knee cut specifically because of her. Yeah. I was like, I want to do this. And now with what he's taught me, and then like going back and looking at her stuff, I was like, oh, I'm retooling this. This is my knee cut now. It's not. I still I still be getting jacked up.
Yeah.
What's your go-to advice for new grapplers stepping onto the mats for the very first time?
You're not going to be good at it right away, and that's expected and that's normal. Just keep coming around.
It's perfect. I wish I would have heard that day one as well.
I needed to hear that.
Like, that's why I need to actually text my buddy's son right now. Like, hey, you're not. But I think coming from me is going to come off different because he's just going to read a text. You're not good.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
that's all he's going to see. He's going to text me back. Hey, dude, fuck you. Like, see you on the mats. Number 4 with being a podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And you're early on, so, you know, but still, who's a guest that you like to, you know, like a dream guest you like to have on?
Fionn Davis.
Duh, I should have known.
I call her my jiu-jitsu Taylor Swift because I love Taylor Swift, and she's like the Taylor Swift of jiu-jitsu for me.
And I know this is gonna give me some pushback, but look, I had to go listen to a bunch of Taylor Swift just to kind of understand what's going on, and I ended up kind of digging it. I was like, you know what, I kind of fucks with this a little bit.
She came out when I was like a freshman or sophomore in college, and then I feel like I grew up with her, and like her Red album I was just getting out of a relationship with, and it was like my reintroduction into single life. Anyway, I could also go on a whole tangent on Taylor Swift.
Maybe that'll be the next episode. We can unite as Swifties.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the last one, dream location for BJJ seminar.
Ooh, that's a good one. Costa Rica.
Nice. I think is it Costa Rica or Puerto Rico? I think one of there's like always like a big event going on down in one of those, like not boot camp, but kind of like a stay away camp or something.
Yeah.
I have to look into that.
I think the Rotolo brothers are starting something down in Costa Rica. And then like the Danaher Death Squad went to Puerto Rico during COVID, and something happened that none of them will talk about, and that's where the Danaher Death Squad died.
Yeah. That's it's like when you hear that, it's like, oh, like they broke up, and it's like, are you sure? Is that just a rumor? And then you start seeing the B team, and then you see Team New Wave, and it's like, oh, they really did. And now you're hearing these crazy rumors. It's like, you know what? I just want to see some jiu-jitsu. Like, that's all.
That is a dark Reddit rabbit hole to go down. I've gone down it, and it is dark.
I see. That's why I can't do it. Those rabbit holes get you, and I'm of the kind of mind where I get obsessed, and I'm like, ooh, like I need to know more. Like, let me go listen to like some podcasts that might be talking about this, and let me go listen to like, you know, some psychology audiobooks like behind all of this now.
Yeah, it's the jiu-jitsu hyper focus that we have.
Yeah, it's like I always tell my wife when it comes to the ideal of like, I joke about being lazy, but it's like, it's not that I'm lazy. It's just I don't want to do the shit that I don't like. But it's like, you look like any given, I think last weekend or the weekend before, I think I recorded 9 hours worth of podcasts. It's like, I'm not like, not the podcast is the hardest thing to do. You still got to edit. You still got to do all this other shit. So it's like, you know, but that hyper focus comes into play because it's like, I need to zero in on this thing here. So we got this. We got it. We got it, cousin Laura.
Yeah, we sure do.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up there. Thank you again, Laura, for making the time to come on as a guest. I always think when it comes to people being a guest on a podcast, it's like, look, you took time out of your day to sit down and talk with me for an hour and a half here. So thank you so much for sharing your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Good. Then, you know, as I always say, I definitely want to have you back because that's the goal with this podcast, is to present a product that people, you know, when you're here, you feel like I would love to come back and talk again. I've only had one guest that didn't want to come back, and I've had 3 guests that I didn't want back. So So it's like, it's always refreshing at the end where it's like, thank you for doing this. And when I'm like, hey, I definitely want to have you back. And it's like, they're like, yeah, I want to come back. I'm like, yes, we win. We all win.
Oh yeah. I'll come back. You got to come on BJJ Babes. Like, we're cousins. Like,
absolutely. Like, we got this.
We got this.
Before we get out of here, are there any shout outs or mentions you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Shout outs or mentions. I would say, come check me out, BJJ Babes Podcast. If you have a story about your, time in jiu-jitsu, or, you just want to check it out, I'm on Instagram. I'm on all the podcast platforms. I'm on TikTok, trying to put more out there on TikTok. Would love to connect with people.
All right. Awesome. I'll be sure to put your links in the show notes so everybody knows where to find you. And also, when I do the reposts on Instagram and everything as well.
Good.
And as always, to the listeners, thank you. If you have any questions, concerns, criticisms, anything, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mats Podcast on Instagram. I joke about the email. Go ahead and email if y'all want to. offthemats2020@gmail.com. Yeah. I will, answer any email you send me as long as it's friendly. And if it's not friendly, I'm going to read it on air and I'm going to troll you. So we will roast you. Trust me, I got professional roasters on my side. So don't fuck with me. Not today. It's the holiday season. I ain't in the mood. Like, I want a PlayStation 5 and I didn't get one. I want to give a big shout out to my crew over at Nerd Rage Radio. Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Tiki, all the guys. Thank you. If it wasn't for Nerd Rage Radio, I wouldn't actually be doing the podcast. So thank you to those guys. I appreciate the hell out of you. And I also want to give another shout out to my other podcasts. So You Like Horror. If you're into scary movies, go check that out. As we're going into 2025, we are going to be introducing the theme of remakes versus originals. So, we're going to be talking about the Amityville remake in 2005 versus the original in, I want to say it was 77 or 79. Both really, really fun films for me. We're going to be talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake versus original. We might talk about The Crow, even though it's not horror, but it's still a remake versus original. That's worth talking about, maybe. But anyhow, go check that out. Find us on Instagram. So You Like Horror. All the words are separated by underscores, and wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can find that podcast right there. So You Like Horror. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my guest today, Miss Laura the Blue Belt. Thank you again for sharing your story and your experiences. We do appreciate you, and we definitely got to do this again. And I can already feel like, as we were talking, it's like, oh, we're getting super casual and comfortable now. We're in this. This is like a phone call right now. So thank you, everybody, for being on this phone call with us, and thank you, Laura, for doing this as well.
Thank you so much, Dante.
Not a problem. And again, to the listeners, we love you guys. Thank you. You know what it is. You guys keep listening, and we're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.